All right, everyone, let's continue. So now that we have sort of the basic understanding of like how to open up a raster image into Photoshop and to do some simple moving around of the document, let's talk about creating our own documents. Okay. Now, why would we want to do that? Well, when you open up a digital image into Photoshop or some other program, the dimensions and other properties are already set in the image. For instance, it could be, but sometimes you're going to want to control those properties. You might want to control like the dimensions of the image, or there's some other properties we're about to talk about, like resolution or color space that you may also want to control that you can't do if you just open up an image you get off of the online or something like that. So let's talk about making a new composition in Adobe Photoshop. So to make a new composition in Photoshop, I'm going to go to File and I'm going to go to New or Command or Control N, depending if you have a Mac or a PC. All right, this is our template here. Now despite having all of this, we actually don't need any of that. We really just need this. Okay. This is going to start with the name of our document, the dimensions of our document, resolution, which we'll talk about in a second, and color space. Okay, let's kind of go over this. All right, first is the name of your document. If you don't give your document a name, it's just going to default to something very basic like Untitled 1. Instead of having something like that, why don't we have a more descriptive name like or Mr. Hurwich's document or something like that. Okay. Next is setting up the dimensions of your project. Now, if you were painting and you went to an art store like Utrecht or something like that, you would buy like a canvas, and the canvas is already set in certain dimensions, like 12 inches by 12 inches or 2 feet by 2 feet. That's kind of what we're doing here, where it's like we're trying to set up our composition and we can set it up in different measurements. Now, you can measure it in inches, which is, the default we kind of use here in America, the empirical system. You can also use metric, which means like centimeters and millimeters and all that good stuff. There's also this thing called a pixel. Okay. What is a pixel and why would we maybe want to do this? So I'm going to show you. Photoshop is what we would call a raster graphic program. Okay. And what a raster graphic is an image comprised of pixels. Okay. What is a pixel? Well, a pixel is a virtual measurement, meaning unlike, say, an inch or a centimeter or a millimeter or something like that, a pixel doesn't have a defined finite width. Okay. So let me kind of show you what I mean by that. I know my desktop is super, dirty and all that. Let's imagine, like, I have my desktop here, right? And my item on my actual computer, if I were to take out a, ruler and measure it, let's just for the sake of argument say that this is 1 inch wide, right? Well, what I could